Dopeness.
Awakening Minds from Hypnosis.
Yes, you are joining us again to be discussing the education system. Like, we send our children to school every single day. We send them off to school, they come home, and it's like we really don't even know what they're up to in school and what they're literally teaching our children anymore. Nowadays, it's like we're not even really involved. I don't know a lot of parents that go to the parent-teacher conferences and are a part of the school board and making decisions as far as what they're gonna, what things are gonna be taught to the children. So it's like, what are our children learning these days?
A child educated only at school is an uneducated child. So it's definitely important that we pay more attention to what our children are learning in school, and not only that, but take the time to sit with them and teach them about what's really happened in this world, because there's always three sides to the story. What one person says, the other person says, and the truth. And if we just strictly base everything, off of what these school systems are telling our children, then we're not really sure that they're going to be getting the proper knowledge and education that they need as far as life.
Yeah.
You can take your child to school, but they're not going to learn how to be a good person. They're not going to learn, how to make sure they're good with their credit. They're very important things that aren't even taught in the school system that we need to make sure our children are getting informed about.
I can reflect back on so many different things that, as an adult, I've found out is not actually true. You know what I mean? So it's like you go to school and your parents direct you to obey the teachers when you go to school. Make sure you're paying attention. Make sure that you're listening to what they tell you. Make sure you do your homework, and I don't feel like there's enough conversation being had with you and the child as far as, okay, what happened, at today at school? Like, what did you guys learn? What did how was your interaction with, your peers and your teachers and things like that, and just finding out about what's really going on behind the scene. Because like I said, when I was in school, I had my own personal experience to know, like, the school system isn't all that it's cracked up to be. And, when we learn about Christopher Columbus and we learn about, like, the history, it's been very watered down with Western culture, and it's not well-rounded for everybody. Everybody, I feel like, depending on your culture, your history and what you are to learn varies based on that. Where do you come from? So at the end of the day, I don't feel like enough schooling is actually taught to the children as far as, like, personalized to them and what they should be learning. A lot of times the schools are teaching you one set thing, and it's really just for you to be a slave in the corporate world, and it's teaching everybody the same thing, but everybody is going to have something different to take in from, or should be able to, because there's so much of a difference and variety of people in the United States. Like, that's what America was. Originally people thought of America as the melting pot in the land of the free, where people came along because it embraced what we all knew what America was about, which was that we were all different, and we embraced that. But like when you look at the school systems and you see how they teach the children, it's kind of like double standard, or like hypocritical, really.
Very much so.
I would think so. So, like, we got to start really getting involved in what our children are.
And I think another thing that is very important for us, I seen a clip on YouTube, and it was asking a lot of different children that were African American, where does history begin for you? Where does your history as a black person begin?
Yes.
And every single one of these children said slavery. That's not where black history begins, for sure. That's a part of it, but that's not where we started off. We didn't start off as slaves, just poor and didn't have anything. We're actually very royal, really advanced and ahead of our time. So it's like things like that, I know at least for black history, it's going to be different than what is put into the books, because they'll focus on one area, and not really touch on the areas of expertise. We don't really hear much about all of the inventions that Black people have created, but we know that they're out there. So you don't really hear much about Marcus Garvey.
Yeah.
But we know that he was an amazing man that did a lot for his people and tried to advance everyone to a different level. So it's important that we really pay attention to what is put in these books, and we make sure that we educate our children outside of, you know, slavery as being a part of Black history, because it's deeper than just slavery for, you know, African American people.
It's true. And I mean, I feel like the consciousness have raised so much because a lot of things that weren't really openly discussed, like, you know, those things as far as our history and where we really come from, is really out there now. Like, it's out there, and every time I pull up, you know, my social media, so many different posts about the reality of who, you know, where we really come from and our truth, you know what I'm saying? And not in slavery, our truth does not exist, you know, just when slavery started. Like, we have so much more of our story that you know, derives prior to slavery, you know, that we are not aware of. And so, you know, there was a really good article that I read, and it was something that Dr. Sabi was saying about how, you know, who you are stems from where you're from and where your roots are from, and, you know, basically just your intake when it comes to just your genetic makeup and certain things and how you survive and thrive in certain environments based on where you're from. So it's the same thing with education as well. Like, you know, Black people need to know where they come from so that way they can embrace who they are, you know what I'm saying, and love who they are and where they come from. And this culture in this school, like, almost trains Black people to hate themselves. Like, I mean, I remember being in elementary school and learning about slavery, like, and I was like, you know, as a Black person, it made you feel like when you looked around the class and you seen all these white, well, I don't want to say it like that, but just like the reality of it is, it made you look at your environment differently, and it made you question, like, well, wow, you know,
how we were even get to this
exactly,
point.
You know what I mean? And the reality, that history is not 100% true, you know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, Black people are not the only people that became slaves, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, we should know more about our history than just slavery, like you said, you know what I mean? And then on top of that, if we all know that school is set up to condition the minds anyway, you know what I mean? And when you're in school, you see the segregation, you know what I'm saying, between different groups, different types of people. There's always the stereotypes
and the geeks, and the cheerleaders, the football squad.
Yes, exactly. And there's that known separation between a certain type of people.
It's not even discussed. Yeah. It's just already there.
It's already there, and it's just based on stereotypes, you know, propaganda, different movies and stuff. Because before I even went to school, I seen you know, certain TV shows that kind of introduced that whole concept to you before you even go to school. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of those things as a child, first of all, you're innocent. You go into a school where now you're being influenced by your peers too. You know what I mean? So it's really hard for a child who hasn't been taught by their parents confidence and, like, hey, you need to stand in your own and who you are, embrace who you are. When you go to school, you don't try to fit in with this crowd and that crowd, and you be who you are, and, you know, and teach that child to stand up and have their own mind and not just always listen to what the teacher is saying, and ask questions and be, you know what I'm saying, use their mind, that's what we have that thought process for, to question things that we don't understand and to gain understanding. And so that way that your child can come home to you after school and ask you, hey, you know, Mom, I learned this today, but I'm still really kind of confused about this, and, you know, I didn't really know how to ask, but what do you think about this? And you can kind of have a personal understanding and interpret that the right way for your child, so that way they understand it the way that you believe they should understand it. Because if you're leaving it up to somebody else to teach your child, that's a problem, you know what I'm saying? Because you can't always trust the person the teacher at the school to teach your child the right thing, because as you said before, we've seen several posts that exhibit teachers, you calling black students niggers and saying you're never going to amount to this. And, and my thing is, when you have these inner city kids that are going to school and you have these teachers who don't have any concern for the development or the learning of that in particular child's mind, and they want to see, to continue to have that same stereotype about that group of people, you know what I mean, then they're not going to put their all into trying to uplift that child and make them see their greatness.
And a lot of times, with situations like that, they'll pass the child just to get them out of their hair. Or, a lot of times, also with kids that are in sports, I think it's really important that if your child is in sports and is on the varsity team and things of that nature, that you're making sure that they are really getting the education that they need, because I've known so many people who've gotten passes and passing grades from their teacher because the teacher knew that they was on the football squad, and if they didn't have a certain grade, they wouldn't be able to play. So it's like you said, you have to make sure that, first of all, it's not guaranteed that the person that is working with your child genuinely cares about their best interest. And I feel like it's important that we do as much as we can to be involved and to get a feel of who the teacher is, what they're going for, how they're running the classroom and things of that nature. But that's just a small gist of the education that a child needs. Etiquette, that's not something that they teach in school. How to treat people, that's not something that you're going to learn at school. You might have a psychology class or two, but at the end of the day, the good morals and values of being a good person and how to care for one another is not something that is going to be taught in the school system. And we can see that is up to the parents to do that, because we have so many kids that are being bullied and tormented in these classrooms by their peers. So it's like we have to make sure that we're teaching our children to, first off, stand up for themselves and to stand up for other people around them, because you never know what they're dealing with and facing with going into these different systems.
Right. And I mean, pay attention to your local newscast. You know what I'm saying? Like, you will see these different changes that are being made in these schools that are local that you would think would never happen. Like, I've heard recent reports about, elementary schools having they don't have boy and girl bathrooms anymore, and they're basically taking gender outside of the school. Like, they're basically not allowing the kids to identify with their gender, and they're like kind of forcing that idea on the children at such a young age, where they have not fully developed their minds enough to really be processing things about, heterosexuality.
It's a form
versus,
of desensitization.
Exactly, and that's what they're doing, and they're starting it at an early age. And then if you see, these are actually things that are being made at a higher level when they're making these changes in the curriculum to actually start forcing these types of things to be taught to the children, and the parents are having a very strong voice and going against it, but they are still passing these in particular bills or whatever you want to call them to be enforcing these things on children. And my thing is, if you're in elementary school, you haven't even reached puberty yet. I don't feel that it's necessary for a child that young to process anything that has to do with a sexual preference or anything like that. That's not something that a child should even be worried about at that point. So the fact that they're changing that in schools is something I feel like parents should be aware of and really be taking seriously. This is something that I feel like, and I never even thought would be a question when I was in school, is whether a boy can come in the girl's restroom or a girl can go in the men's restroom. And the fact that this is something that our children are having to face, to me, is something that is serious.
It's a red flag of where things are at and where things are going.
Exactly. And the fact, you see that they're making laws to, I do not discriminate against anybody who makes a decision on, they want to have some type of sexual preference. That's your business, and you have the right to decide that you want to do it. But the fact that they're making this thing so trendy and making, people are wearing it on their foreheads, I feel like now that's kind of inappropriate, So I feel like the fact that it's even a topic of discussion about who you like to fuck, to me, that's a problem. So my thing is, and then it's being so appropriated discussion that they're actually putting it in schools to where children are having to have this type of topic in school. And, you know, it's to the point where there's certain things that are being discussed with children in the schools where they're advising the children to not advise their parents about topics of discussion that's being discussed in school. So, you know, Hillary Clinton has a quote about how our children don't belong to us and they belong to the collective. And you have to ask yourself, bitch, what the fuck do that mean? Because my kids belong to me. I don't got none, but if I did have some, they belong to me. And I'm going to determine what my child is being taught. And I'm going to determine the things that I know that are important morally and you know, as far as value. I'm going to make sure that my children are aware of what, you know, why certain morals and values are important. And so that way, you know, they're not getting lost in all this confusion that propaganda has been causing, all this trendiness of, you know, this out off the, you know, wall activity that's going on lately.
Media plays a really big part in, you know, how things are happening, you know, with the teachers in the school systems and also just with kids at school, period. You know, you have movies like Mean Girls out and everybody think it's so cool and cute to be mean and rude to one another. Since when has it been cute to have an attitude? You know, so it's like we have to pay attention to also what we're allowing our children to suck in while they are at home. So that way when they do go to school, they can set a good example for themselves, for you. If anything, you know, when I do have children, I want to make sure my children have the information that they need to be able to protect themselves, know what they're up against, because 99.9% of the people that they come across isn't going to really care about them, isn't going to really have their best interest at heart. So it's best that we take it upon ourselves to educate our children outside of the classroom so that they're protected in a different way. Knowledge is power. And, you know, simply knowing one thing or not knowing one thing could put you in jail for 20 years or have you walking as a free man. So it's really important that, you know, we're doing that we're giving them that information and that we're making sure that they have access to the tools that they need to actually be a person that can succeed in this world that is more than likely set up against them.
Pretty much, because, you know, our children is our future, you know, so like what they're being taught in school now, especially since we've seen a huge decrease in what's being invested in the schools now. They're taking all of the, you know, special, you know, artistic classes out of the schools, and, you know, they're like really, you know, dimming down like the education and watering down the education. They're not really teaching our children like what, you know, we have the option. You're not, you know, checking in with your kids every day, making sure that you know exactly what it is that they're learning, how their teachers are acting at school. You know, I mean, there's so many things about teachers having, you know, relations with the students. It's just, the school system is getting out of hand. And I mean, if you ain't seen one of these videos online that's showing you like how these police, first of all, these police too, like these schools are turning into juvenile centers. Yes. And they looking like Marion County Jail.
And you have to take into consideration too that, you know, teachers are highly underpaid. Personally, I feel like the teachers should be the highest paid, you know, workers, period. The teachers teach the doctors, the teachers teach the dentists, the lawyers, the accountants. Like, everyone has to be taught by a teacher. And the fact that our teachers are working paycheck to paycheck, you know, and then dealing with all these different children and everything like that, I mean, unless you have someone that truly, honestly, from the bottom of their heart cares about children, it's kind of hard to say that your child is going to get the best education that they need anyways. You know, you can try to go to do homeschooling or pay for, you know, private schools and things of that nature, but if that's not an option for you, then I feel like, you know, it's just very good to get involved and see what's going on behind the scenes and just know that, you know, you're giving them more education outside of what is being told to them. Because when they get out of school, most of the things that they learn in school aren't even going to really apply to them in real life. So you know, it's like I haven't used algebra book since the 9th grade, and I haven't needed it for anything,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
So it's like we have to just make sure that we are doing our part. Because like you were saying, you know, our children are our future. And if we fail them, we fail ourselves in the long run.
Pretty much. I mean, if we don't do something now while we're noticing all this stuff, because I mean, I know you guys see it just like we see it. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I know it's hard when you don't really know what you can do about it, but you know, making yourself aware of things and just doing whatever you can do for your child. That's one thing that you can control, you know, to a certain extent. And so, you know, instead of, you know, hollering and screaming at your kids because something didn't go right at school, like take time to understand them and figure out, like, okay, why isn't my child really, you know, really doing well in school? Whether it's just, you know, because, you know, they can't sit still, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever the situation is with your kid. Because I know I've had people that come to me and tell me about their situations where their kid, you know, something happened with the school and they just went off on their kids and they don't really even have time to listen with their children, you know, or why they are having difficulty in school. So it's like you have to take time to listen to your children because, you know, children are not just children. You know what I'm saying? Children are pretty much, they're going to be adults one day. You know what I'm saying? So you can't underestimate your child and just look at them like, oh, you know, they're just a teenager, they're going through a phase. No, a lot of times they're going through things because you as a parent is not giving them what they need and understanding them and really trying to get to know who they are, and you're just like looking at them as a kid, you know, you're not really investing your energy in, you know, really being a part of, you know, their lives and really trying to understand them. It's just more like you're just,
we have to make sure that
a dictator.
Making the right choices.
So at the end of the day, we want to remember the importance of communicating with our children, talking to them about, you know, how their day was at school, what they learned, you know, their interaction with their teachers. And then, I mean, the most importantly is making sure that outside of just sending our children to school, we are also teaching them ourselves, you know, making sure that they have the values and the morals and the importance, and giving them wisdom of life and understanding of what the world is really about, because the school is definitely not going to
We
teach
have to
them.
make sure that we're taking it into our own hands to educate our children in different areas that the classroom is not going to do.
Exactly. So make sure your children know their history. Make sure their children know, you know, the reality of the world, and make sure that your children feel empowered, and, you know, you're teaching them to be leaders, and, you know,
And teaching them to love themselves, most importantly, to love themselves and to be confident in who they are, and that they don't have to
on
follow
that note,
the crowd.
we want to thank you guys so much for joining us again at
Peace and love.
Dopeness.
Peace and love.